This is Luke over at Whittlesticks, and today we are going to do a new saddle for a Gretsch acoustic guitar. So I had someone ask on my Facebook line, like the process of doing a saddle for an acoustic, and so here we go. Let's get started. So here we go. Here is our Gretsch, and we've got basically everything is really low, and you can play the notes, but the second you start fretting anything, like every note rattles a little bit, and basically the saddle needs to come up. This guitar has dehydrated just a little bit, so the top is sunk. And because of the saddle that is too short here, like I said, we got to raise it up. But as we'll get into this, I'll show you. I did a little investigation to make sure that this is what this needed, and also this was just going to be a shim. I was just going to shim this up and call it good. But I found something, and I'll show you that now. I just want to string it up long enough for you to see that it was rattling. And I had to bring it all the way up to full pitch because if I don't, the neck has a back bow, which is common. And just everything the strings sit on the fretboard. So we got those loose. These are new strings the customer just put on. So I am going to save them. I'm going to use my little holder here that was done by Ian Davlin over at the Luth Group. Let's put this up here so you can kind of get a good look at it. It's just a very simple 3D print. Holds the bridge pins and the strings to keep them from getting all tangle-mangled up. So we're just going to take this. Put that right there, and I'm actually going to secure this thing down. I totally forgot. I set this up here and started videoing and didn't do my full secure job here. I was trying to get cameras sorted out. So let's get this latched down real quick. Okay. I'm just going to pop these loose real quick so we can do this faster. Now basically all this is going to do is just keep these strings from getting tangled up and keeps the bridge pins in line for where they were originally. Now that's not always necessary, but on some guitars, especially older guitars, they do tend to get to the point where, bridge pins have been fit on and off, new ones, just singles have been replaced, and so sometimes the bridge pins only fit in certain places. So this is not a bad idea. And with this, I can just take these strings here. You can coil these up. I've found, for the most part, actually just take this, bring it right down here, clamp it onto the total vise down on the main beam, and now they are out of the way, and I don't have to deal with them. And when I'm ready, I'll just pull that up, put the strings back in. So one thing we found here, we're going to pull this saddle out and adjust this light just a little bit. Get a little more light there. So basically what I've found is once we pull up this transducer right here, and this is the reason why I was just going to shim this, because it doesn't need to go up that much, but we've got one, let's get those to flex, 2, 3 shims already underneath it. So having 3 shims under the transducer, basically if I do this anymore, the saddle is not going to be down enough, far enough down in the slot for me to, feel good about it being stable up and down, side to side here. This would stick so far out it'd just fold over. And that's hard on the bridges, hard on the saddles, and so it's a much better idea at this point just to go through, pull these 3 out, and do a new saddle that's the correct height and everything. So yeah, because I'd have to put in 4, maybe 5 to get this the right height. Probably just one more. But you don't want 4 shims in your saddle slot. Just a bad idea. So anyway, I'm just going to check, make sure everything under this transducer looks good. There's no other shims under there, so that is a good surface for me to start to work with. Perfect. All right, here we go. So first off, we are going to start with a piece of bone. Now, I like using the unbleached bone because this has a little bit of the natural oil still in the bone itself, and so it acts a little bit like a lubricant. And anyway, yeah, so right now you can see this thing is extra wide. It will not go down in the slot, and it is also extra long. And we put this one in the comparison. That gives us an idea of the extra amount of length. So I'm going to set this right there. I'm going to make a little mark and cut off some of the length right here before I do the thicknessing, because I don't want to thickness that much saddle for no reason. So let me take this over to the sander, and I'm going to cut this off first, and then I'm going to get this close to thickness on the belt sander, and then I'll actually use a marble slab and some sandpaper to get this all the way. I'll be right back. And so now that I'm close with taking the sander, got the bulk of the material off, I still need to kind of square it up a little bit. So I use a marble slab with sandpaper stuck to it, and I've got a little holder to do the saddle with. And we just take and run this like that. A couple times each direction on the roughest, just to kind of make sure everything is flat and square. And I'm going to go test this real quick. Close, but not quite. All right, so I did some sanding back and forth, some test fitting. Sorry, the video should be a little bit better now. My internet was having an issue, so I had to stop videoing for a minute. And anyway, so I just did some more sanding on these different grits. I got this down to something that fits. So if we go back over to the guitar, this now drops right in. As far as thickness goes, it's still a little too long, but it now fits just right down into that slot. It's nice and snug, but not too tight. I don't have to force it in, but it is nice. So I'll do a little polishing on the sides, and that'll make it so it just slides right in perfectly. All right, so now let's get down to marking this. All right, so the next step is we need to round these ends. So you can see they're nice and square right now, and those slots are round. If you look at the old, sorry, get this in view, look at the old saddles. You have a round end. This has nice and square ends. So we got to put a little round on that. I just do it on the sander. And I also have to finish fitting this to length. So it is still a little bit long, so I'll use the sander for that. And I'll just do it real quick because there's not much to it. You just take and round those ends, round one end, and then I trim this one down really close, round it, and then just fine tune it back and forth. All right, so I got this cut down to length, rounded the ends, and also took on that same marble slab, ran the bottom of this saddle on it, so I made sure that it was nice and flat and smooth. No bumps or ridges in there that I have to deal with. So now this takes and slides right down into position, just like that. And now we have a nice, snug, tight saddle. And now we can mark it for height, and we'll put the curvature on the top. So what I actually use for this is I've made a little marking stick. And I'm going to move that wire out of the way. Oh, it's right in it now. Great. Don't know how long that's been in there. So now we're going to take this little stick here. Now this is simply just a piece of wood that I set for, you can see it says high E, low E, where this gives me the markup off the bottom of the, so this lays right on the fretboard just like this, comes up to the saddle and gives me a height to mark that saddle at the height that I want it. And you can see like this is already to height. So I knew this had to come up, and this will probably come down a little bit more. I set this to height, and then usually once you put string tension on it, the top or the neck raises up a little bit, and so then I will have to shave a little bit more off the bottom. But this gives me a good general start, and this is touching the top right there, so that means that's good to go on that end, which seems a little higher than I wanted it, but that's how this goes sometimes. And I'm going to make a little mark right here from that neck. Now this one is a little tougher because that neck does have a little bit of a bow in it. So I am going to try to find that good mark right there. There is my mark with the pencil on the front of that saddle. This side, let me just double check, see if it just comes and touches that very top. So I will work with that. It should work out fine because I will probably have to take a little off this height once I put string tension on it. But let's just let's set the curvature of this, and we'll start setting the intonation. And that is nice and snug. Okay. All right, so now that we have our mark there, this is a 12-inch radius on this guitar, and so I'm going to make a right up to the top edge of the saddle right there, put my mark on right there, and now I'm going to draw this arc. So now I have got a nice arc across that. I'm going to call that good because I will have to undoubtedly drop that just a little bit anyway. So now I'm going to take this over to the sander, literally just sand that curvature into it, as you can see right there. I'm going to sand that curve in, and then I'll mark out for the intonation. Okay, there is my curved slot, or my curved saddle on top. You can see that. Now I'm going to set this back down into the guitar for just a second, and I'm going to mark where my strings are. Sorry, my hand's probably going to get in the way here, but I'll try to be quick. And I'm actually going to use kind of a just standard intonation for this that seems to work pretty well time and time again. So I'm going to set this one all the way forward, this one all the way back, this one all the way forward, and this all the way back, and then these two it's just a line between those two. And that seems to be a pretty good intonation for, I would say, 99% of the guitars out there. Now, if you have a guitar that is crazy off for whatever reason and you need to fine tune it from here, you definitely can. But this is where I usually start. And so now I'm going to stick this in the vise, nut and saddle making vise real quick. And we're going to file some intonation slots. So we got this set in the vise, and I always start with the B string. And I'm going to take and center my string mark right there with the file. Give that a couple little files. Get that to hold still. And it doesn't take much, so you want that one all the way back. Leave a little bit of thickness so that's not coming right down to a sharp edge. And now I'm actually going to file this. I'm going to start filing down here and work my way up. Because we want this low E all the way back. And we want to make kind of a line between there and the G. So I want more taken off here. We're going to come, this bottom edge will be right down to the edge, but I want a little bit of a flat spot left for the low E to sit on. And just about like that. So just a little bit of filing across there, just like that. Now I'm going to take and flip this around. And now we're going to do the high E. So I'm going to make a start right there, work my way off the guitar, off the saddle. Do a hard stop right there. File that down in a little bit. And now we're doing kind of the same thing we did on the other side, where I'm going to go more right here by the G so we can push that all the way forward, and then just come down across and make kind of a straight line across the saddle. And so then we get that nice slant. And there we go. And I have a little, just a little flat ridge right across the top there. It's maybe less than 1 millimeter wide. But that's going to give me a little spot for those strings to come rest on that's not too fine a point. Okay, just like that. Perfect. Now we're going to take and sand this out. So I'm going to take Now I already sanded all the sides and everything down to 600 on the marble slab. So on here, all I have to do is I'm going to start, this is an 800, and this is what I'm actually going to sand the top of the saddle with. And get a really nice smooth, and actually kind of go right over the top, kind of round that last little bit over. Get right on those edges, kind of round over those so I don't have any real sharp edges. I'm going to do the E side right here, roll that up. I'm going to work a little bit on that B so it's not too sharp an edge on the back of that saddle. And just run across the top there just like that. Now this divot right here for the B string, I rarely get polished out. I will run it on the buffer and that will help, but it's one of those where you're not going to notice too much down in there. You get that main top and it looks really nice. Okay, so there's the top to 800. Now I've got one that's 1,000 grit. And we're just taking the scratch marks out from the 800. You don't want to go too much because you don't want to alter your radius that you just spent all that time getting. Not really a lot of time, but you know what I mean. And now I just take the sides and I run them flat on the 800 and the 1,000 grit real quick, just to get a nice sheen on it when I buff it. And I actually just take this to my big pedestal buffer. A lot of guys can use a Dremel buffer. You don't even have to if you don't want to. You know, how much polish you put on the saddle is really up to you, and you know how much time you want to spend at this. I'm showing you, this is what I normally do for what I charge for a saddle. Because this part doesn't take me very long, but it does take more time than if I didn't bother. So a little 1,000 grit on each side. Little buff of the ends. Okay, and you can see like even right there, that's a pretty good sheen, just doing that 1,000 grit. And so that's definitely something like most of the time you could call that just fine. Let me show you what doing the buffing does. Okay, and then here is the buffed. Now you can see we got a really nice sheen on there. As this goes through the light, it has that nice flash to it. So this is where I really like to take them to. So, you know, yes, you can get that to a higher buff, and actually a lot of this There's a little bit of buffing rouge still on it, so it's kind of, there we go. You know, that's a nice looking saddle, and that's one you can definitely feel good about, you know, sticking your name on. So let's get this back in the guitar. Okay, so now we can drop that right down in there. Ooh, that fits nice. And it's definitely a little bit taller than the last one, but it's a great fit. So now I'm actually gonna we'll just put the strings on real quick and bring it up to pitch and double check our heights, because more than likely they will be a little bit high, which is okay, because at this point I will just take it off the bottom of the saddle. The top of the saddle is done now. I'm gonna put the strings on real quick and we'll go from there. Oh, what did I do? Oh. Alrighty, we got all the strings back on. We got this back up to full pitch. And actually, I measured the string heights right here at a 12th fret, and that is 4/64ths, and that is 5/64ths, right where I want it actually. So I am done with this. So this is now the correct height that I need, and we are set to go. So this guitar is done, and I'll have a happy customer that now has a saddle that does not rattle. You can now play all these notes, they're nice and clear. And we're good. So I hope you liked that little fix. I did this because one of my followers over on Facebook asked for the like order of operation, how I did the saddle, you know, what step I did first. So I thought I'd show this, and that is how I cut an acoustic saddle. And you know, there are some differences as you get into different guitars, but in 95% of them, this is how I do it. So this is the style I always use, always have really good luck at it. Intonation always really close. Now, some guitars, the intonation's really out. Sometimes you have to move the saddle slot. Stuff like that. This guitar, this sounds great. I checked it with the tuner. Intonation's right on. So if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe. If you have another question, please put it down in the comments. I will try to do another video of it, or at least try to answer it. And be kind to everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.